We are now in lecture 19 on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and we will discuss here causes of virtue in the soul and signs of virtue in the soul. We'll also look at the two chief virtues in the soul, and they are about pleasure and pain, and they are temperance and courage. Finally, we will look at the roles of feelings, predispositions, and active states in the soul in our search for where virtue is in the soul. Aristotle really goes into the root cause of virtue and its opposite, vice, when he proposes that human beings act with or without virtue due to pleasure and pain. We make bad choices that lead to lack of happiness and harmonious being at work in the soul due to excessive and deficient desiring with respect to fear of pain and love of pleasure. And those who love pleasure and fear pain, neither excessively nor deficiently, are the persons with virtue in their souls and actions, and make the right choices and are happy. In that sense, our desirous relation to love of pleasure and fear of pain is a cause of virtue or lack thereof in the soul. But the desirous relation to love of pleasure and fear of pain is also a sign of virtue or lack thereof in the soul. Those who love and take pleasure in acting at the mean with regard to pleasure and pain are the virtuous persons. And those who do not love and do not take pleasure in acting at the mean with regard to pleasure and pain, and can only do so with difficulty by having to struggle to overcome themselves, and if they even do that, those are the folks lacking in virtue. All of this is to say that there are really two fundamental or chief virtue, and whether one does or does not have the rest of the virtues depends chiefly on these two virtues. These two virtues are courage and temperance, and they are with regard to pain and pleasure respectively. A discussion of calculation of these two virtues illustrates how the rest of the virtues are calculated as well. So, how are the virtues calculated by our thinking part in the soul? Someone who loves pleasure excessively is indulgent, while someone who loves pleasure deficiently is insensible. But someone who loves pleasure in between too much and too little is temperate. Indulgence and insensibility are vices, while temperance is a virtue. Someone who fears pain excessively is a coward, while someone who fears pain deficiently is rash. But someone who fears pain in between too much and too little is courageous. Cowardliness and rashness are vices, while courage is a virtue. For example, one may fail to apply for a job that they should, or ask a person on a date that they should, or choose to pursue some other project that they should, according to what their reason tells them, due to indulgence or insensibility, or due to cowardliness or rashness. Likewise, due to indulgence or insensibility, or due to cowardliness or rashness, one would choose to do things that their reason would advise against. But if one is courageous and temperate, one would indeed apply for a job that they should, go on a date that they should, and pursue other projects that they should, and not make choices that they should not in general. The goal, then, is to become courageous and temperate, and one becomes courageous and temperate by choosing with courage and temperance again and again. And the more one chooses with indulgence or insensitivity, cowardliness or rashness, the less courageous and temperate one becomes, and the less one will choose to do what their reason advises them to do. So, again, if only a person chooses to act with courage and temperance, and becomes that kind of a person as a result of choosing these ways of acting again and again, then a person's soul works as it should, according to nature. Knowing reason guides unknowing desire, and the person is happy. And the more a person acts without courage and temperance, the more their soul works contrary to nature, the less receptive they are to commands, advices, guidance of reason, and more unhappy they become. Aristotle takes one last deep dive into the soul, looking at the parts of the soul and asking in what way, if any, virtue belongs to their parts of the soul, to those parts of the soul. The first part is feelings. Feelings such as anger, passion, jealousy, love, self-love, sadness, joy, etc. We do not have control over feelings. They simply arise as we go through our daily lives as human beings. Feelings simply happen to us and actually present a challenge to virtue, if anything. So, virtue, well, feelings are also good, but they can present a challenge to virtue. So, virtue does not reside in this part of the soul as such, since this happens without our control. There's not much we can do about it. The second part is our dispositions. Dispositions here refers to how much and in what way we feel our feelings. For example, with regard to anger, how strongly are we disposed to be given in to it? In what way, toward whom, when, etc., are we disposed to express our anger? It would seem that virtue would be precisely here, how we are disposed with regard to our feelings, whether we are disposed to feel them too much or too little, at the wrong place or at the right time, toward the right persons or toward the wrong persons. But Aristotle does not say so. He thinks that virtue happens at the next level of the soul. The third aspect of the soul is what Aristotle calls the active states of the soul. It is here that the relationship between desire and reason is properly determined and results in choice. Here, the soul is active and determines whether it chooses as reason guides or against it, dependent on what sort of virtue of desire and thinking there is in the soul. Virtue and happiness or lack thereof are here. So both feelings and predispositions are kind of like these passive parts of the soul that we don't really have influence over, but we do have influence over these active states of the soul being at work. And that can, in turn, influence the predispositions we have toward feelings and maybe even feelings themselves. But this influence happens at the level of the soul being at work, its active states. We may infer that the soul is not active, but passive at the level of feelings and dispositions. Feelings are in response to our circumstances and are passive in that sense. Dispositions are in response to our feelings and active states in the soul. And they are also passive in that sense. The soul, however, is active, is at work at the level of its active states, as Aristotle calls it.